Thank you, Purnavadya Devidashi Mataji. Thank you, Krishna Sabha and Krishna Das Prabhu, for guiding and allowing us to give our realization in this wonderful program. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, verse 5. Klesho adhikataras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehevadhir vapyate. Klesho adhikataras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehevadhir vapyate. Klesho adhikataras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehevadhir vapyate. What was in so by Srila ki jai. Kleshaha, trouble. Adhikatara, more troublesome. Tesham, of them. Avyakta, unmanifested. Ashakta, being attached. Chetasam, of those whose minds. Avyakta, unmanifested. He, certainly. Gatihi dukkham, progress is troublesome. Dehevadbhi, of the embodiment. Avyapyate, achieve. Trouble more troublesome, of them unmanifested, being attached, of those whose minds unmanifested. Certainly, progress is troublesome, of the embodiments achieve. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in the discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Purport: the group of transcendentalists who follow the path of inconceivable, unmanifested, impersonal future of the Supreme Lord are called Jnana Yogis. And the persons who are full Krishna consciousness engaged in devotional service to the Lord are called Bhakti Yogas. Now here the difference between the Jnana Yoga and the Bhakti Yoga is definitely expressed. The process of Jnana Yoga, although ultimately bringing one to the same goal, is very troublesome. Whereas the path of Bhakti Yoga, the process is being in direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is easier and is natural for the embodied soul. The individual soul is embodied since the time immemorial. It is very difficult for him to simply theoretically understand that he is not the body. Therefore, Bhakti Yoga accepts the deity of the Krishna as worshipable because there is some bodily conception fixed in the mind which can thus be applied. Of course, worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form within the temple is not idle worship. There is evidence in the Vedic literature that worship may be Saguna and Nirguna of the Supreme, possessing or not possessing attributes. Worship of the deity in the temple is Saguna worship, for the Lord is represented by the material qualities. But the form of the Lord, though represented by the material qualities such as stone, wood, or oil, paint, is not actually material. That is the absolute nature of the Supreme Lord. A crude example may be given here. We may find some mailboxes on the street, and if we post our letters in those boxes, they will be naturally go to their destination without difficulty. But any old box or an imitation which we may find somewhere which is not authorized by the post office will not do the work. Similarly, God has an authorized representation in the deity form which is called Archavigraha. This Archavigraha is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. God will accept service through that form. The Lord is omnipotent and all powerful. Therefore, by his incarnation as Archavigraha, he can accept the service of the devotee just to make it convenient for the man in conditioned life. So, for a devotee, there is no difficulty in approaching the Supreme immediately and directly. But for those who are following the impersonal way to spiritual realization, the path is difficult. They have to understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme through such Vedic literature as the Upanishads, and they have to learn the language, understand the non non-perceptual feelings, and they have to realize all these processes. This is not very easy for a common man. A person in Krishna consciousness engaged in devotional service simply by the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, simply by offering regulative obeisances unto the deity, simply by hearing the glories of the Lord, and simply by eating the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the Lord, realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. There is no doubt that the impersonalists are unnecessarily taking the troublesome path with the risk of not realizing the absolute truth at the ultimate end. But the personalist, without any risk, trouble, or difficulty, approaches the Supreme Personality of directly. A similar passage appears in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is stated there that if one has to ultimately surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this surrendering process is called bhakti. But instead, take the trouble to understand what is what is Brahman and spend his whole life in this way. The result is simply troublesome. Therefore, it is advised here that one should not take up the troublesome path of the self-realization because there is uncertainty in ultimate result. A living entity is eternally an individual soul, and if he wants to merge into the spiritual whole, he may accomplish the realization of the eternal and acknowledgeable aspects of his original nature. But the blissful portion is not realized. By the grace of some devotee, such a transcendentalist, highly learned in the process of Jnana Yoga, may come to the point of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service. At that time, long practice in impersonalism also becomes a source of trouble because he cannot give up the idea. Therefore, an embodied soul is always in difficulty with unmanifest, both at the time of the practice and at the time of realization. Every living soul is partially independent, and one should know for certain that this unmanifested realization is against the nature of his spiritual blissful self. So one should not take up this process for every individual living entity, the process of Krishna consciousness, which entails full engagement in devotional service, is the best way. If one wants to ignore this devotional service, there is the danger of turning to atheism. Thus, the process of centering attention on the unmanifested, the unconceivable, which is beyond the approach of the senses, as already expressed in this verse, should never be engaged, never be encouraged at any time, especially in this age it is not advised by the Lord Krishna. So, Hare Krishna. Uh, my realization from this verse is here actually Srila Prabhupada has really emphasized on the impersonal thing, why we should not be impersonal, impersonalist, and if and what are the benefit by uh, approaching Lord as impersonal. And a lot of Srila Prabhupada explain here what is Archa Vigraha, what is Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yogi, and what devotee should and where we should focus. And Srila Prabhupada here, and lastly, Srila Prabhupada says that we should never be encouraged at any time at this age, and we should always take the advice of the Lord Krishna. So some people actually try to worship God as an impersonal energy, that thinking that the God has no form or no personality. But this is very difficult. Srila Prabhupada says that we we know that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and devotee knows that Supreme Krishna is the Supreme Lord and has a beautiful form, loving qualities, sweet pastimes. And if we develop this relationship with our love and devotion, rather than trying to meditate upon the form which we don't know. So Srila Prabhupada says that one should not waste their time. Instead, they should try to focus on pastime of the Lord. So, if we are actually personally connected, actually that brings a joy. Just like when we naturally love our family and friends, we also can through that we can also love Krishna as our Supreme Father, as our friend, or as a master, and that brings a great joy and satisfaction. But whereas the impersonal meditation, I mean, they feel dry and lonely, which I have experienced before coming to Hare Krishna Namata program. I actually done a lot of meditation programs, different. Every year I used to change, but never I used to get satisfied by doing meditation. One, I won't take the name, but one particular meditation where I used to, I was there for a long time, 2 to 3 years, but there's no form and or main achievement, because I still remember that I asked them what is the end, what is the end achievement for me. They said nothing. We just merge into the light, particular light. But still, I wasn't. I tried like an I used to get up at early morning, 2:30, and tried that. But I never satisfied by myself. My soul wasn't satisfied. Definitely, I was looking for something, and it so happened that I came in. Uh, I think I went to the temple, and I heard Amrish Prabhu's lecture, and since then I never looked back. And now I realize that. So I mean, uh, one should be really focused on the personal form of the Lord. And even Krishna is actually is kind and very accessible to everyone. If you pray for Krishna, even if it's difficulties, he will definitely answer our prayer. And he's actually in Srila Prabhupada says here that Lord himself, he's there in deity form, and also he's in the holy name. He's also in the scriptures, and also he comes through devotees. We come to know through pure devotees. Lord wants to come to us. He wants that we should go to Lord, but because of our approach, because of our thinking, we never think in that line. Actually, Krishna. There are many examples that the Krishna appeared personally to help devotees, like what we are here, like what I am here now today and talking about Bhagavad Gita. That is just because of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, if Srila Prabhupada would have not gone to Western countries. I mean, even Western countries, people hardly knew about the Lord Krishna's name. But just because of the Srila Prabhupada, that, like, everyone now come to know. And even me, even if I would have not joined this Namata program, I would have not known about Srila Prabhupada. I would have known about Krishna uh, and his uh, and his avatars. Yeah. So also Srila Prabhupada, I mean, in one of the lecture I heard about one lecture, Srila Prabhupada said that when Draupadi was in, like, how Krishna is helpful to devotees. So when Draupadi was in distress, like, when she was disrobed in the Kauravas court, she called out Krishna. She was, like, desperate to help someone, and I think immediately Krishna provided unlimited clothes to protect her honor, and that shows that how Krishna personally helps his devotee when the time comes. But for that, one should be sincere, and one should seek the help of the Lord. Even Krishna is in, though even the Krishna is in the spiritual world, actually he appears in the form of the deity in temples and homes, so that we can see him, serve him, and develop love for him. He accepts offering of food, flowers, water, prayers, everything he accepts. But for that, like, we have to have develop our faith, strong faith, and that only it comes through devotional service and through the association of the devotees. Even Srila Prabhupada said that Lord Krishna, he incarnated in his Krishna name. What we chanting is actually this is incarnation. That Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. He is personally present in his name. Any actually you can chant, anyone can chant anywhere, and can feel that Krishna's presence. Even I feel that, yes, whenever I chant sincere, I mean, I do chant the Krishna's name sincerely. I I wasn't totally uh, uh, focused earlier, but now, by reading the Srila Prabhupada's book, by getting the experience from the other devotees, by listening the realization of the devotees, I really realized that if you focus, like, just on the chanting, and you get really, I mean, I can't explain it really, that the way I get that immense satisfaction by chanting. So that Srila Prabhupada has already said that, yes, Lord, he's incarnated in his name as well. So that is the proof for here with me, as because I sincerely I seek uh, the knowledge, and what Srila Prabhupada has given the books and Bhagavad Gita, and the guidance and the knowledge shows that the Krishna is always ready to guide his devotees when we really sincerely see him. Um, in Vrindavan, there's another example which I remember Srila Prabhupada always mentioned, that when Indra sends, like, how the Krishna protects and maintain his devotees. When Indra sent a devastating rainstorm, Krishna lifted Govardhan hill with his lifted finger and provided shelter to all residents. So this shows that how Krishna personally protects those who are depending on him. And even I have to depend on him always. Yes, I do. I never think that I'm independent, or but I always think that I'm always depend on Krishna. And Krishna's mercy through devotees, like I before I said that he, if we uh, if someone cannot directly see Krishna, he sends his pure devotees. I think Amrish Babu mentioned many times about this one, because if this guide and help we talk about the Srila Prabhupada. If Srila Prabhupada would have not traveled worldwide to spread the Krishna consciousness and showing Krishna consciousness, kindness to making spiritual knowledge and available to everyone. If I would have not joined, then again I say that in this Namata group, what would have been in my position? What would have been? I mean, I think in a worse, like what would have been my position? So I thanks to Srila Prabhupada, Gurudev, and Amrish Prabhu for engaging in this devotional service of the Lord. Before Srila Prabhupada traveled to the West, many people had no idea about the Krishna, despite being old and having, despite having been old and having no money. Srila Prabhupada carried his message and transformed the lives of millions. And yes, I am also one of them as well. So even Lord Chaitanya, how we get that Lord Chaitanya, he's a Krishna himself. And he empowered his devotees like Nityananda Prabhu to spread Krishna consciousness. We all know that once Nityananda met two drunkards, Jagai and Madai, and they were criminals. So instead of punishing them, he and the Lord Chaitanya gave them Krishna's name and transformed them into the pure devotees. This is my realization from this verse. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, His Grace Amrish Prabhu, Her Grace Pundipadan Devidasi Mataji, His Grace Krishna Sampurnatis Prabhu for inspiring us to read scriptures and be able to speak few words and purify our life. So this verse we are studying today, Lesho Adhika Tarastesham Avyakta Sakta Chetasam Avyakta Hi Gati Dukham Dehavabdhir Avapyate. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. What a nice philosophy and knowledge Krishna is giving in such a perfect way. I remember Maharaj referring that people who don't believe Krishna, they should read this, what Krishna is saying in the scriptures, such a perfection. Nobody can dispute it. And then Prabhupada writes a very nice purport explaining all those concepts. And Sopan Prabhu, thank you for articulating and relating to this verse, how everything affects us and our position and realizations. So when I was studying these scriptures, this particular verse, and as I told before, Maharaj has inspired me to read Bhagavatam, and I'm trying to read Bhagavatam with my limited capacity. And it's a hair-raising experience. It's just out of world. I know it's very hard to understand, and I don't need to share with anyone. But when I read, and then I can relate, and then I can get an opportunity to talk to devotees, it's real bliss. So I would like to quickly share something from Bhagavatam, where same concept has been discussed. And then Prabhupada has also written very nice purport, and he's quoting Madhvacharya's verse, that how Madhvacharya has actually has talked about this verse, and this is our disciplic succession. This is the bona fide way that we try to talk the same thing. If we don't talk, then we are impersonalist. Yeah. So just quickly, this is from Hans Guhya prayers offered to Lord by Prajapati Daksha. And in this prayer it's very interesting that Prajapati Daksha, he is actually praying to Krishna for his desires. It's very interesting. And Daksha, he's created demigods, demons, and human beings. And when he found the population not increasing properly, he took sannyas and went to Vindhya mountain, where he underwent severe austerities and offered Lord Vishnu a particular prayer, known as Hans Goya prayer, by which Lord Vishnu became very pleased with him. The contents of the prayer, I'll try to discuss only one verse I have picked. And that again, let me come to my realization, probably I'll try to make more sense here and try to make some connection. So this verse is actually when he's concluding his prayer, and towards the end, and the prayer is like this: Yaha prakartir jana pathar jananam yatha shayam deha gato vibhati yatha nilah parthivam ashrito gunam sa ishvaro me kurutam manoratham means we all desire, no? So that's what he's talking about. Kurutam, may he fulfill manoratham, desires for devotional service. That Prabhupada writes this sentence. And the translation is like this: as the air carries various characteristics of the physical elements, like the aroma of a flowers or colors resulting from a mixture of dust in the air, the Lord appears through lower systems of worship according to one's desires. And that is impersist. Although he appears as the demigods and not in his original form, what is the use of these other forms? May the original Supreme Personality of Godhead please fulfill my desires. That's his prayer. So again, when we are studying science and physics in early stage of my career, in schooling, maybe early stage of college, then we this science, no, mixture of dust in the air. That's how the colors actually manifest, no? Then from one color, all the colors, and now I don't know, so many colors and so many. Yeah. So the Bhagavatam talks about this, when even present mankind doesn't know what is Bhagavatam, but Bhagavatam talks about that concept, maybe eternally, but people can't find it. That's the position of impersonalist. And and in this chapter where purport, again very long purport. I never expected Prabhupada will write such a long purport in Kent. I thought, yeah, but Prabhupada purports are real mercy. So here Sri Madhavacharya says, Swadeha stham harim prahur adhama jivam evatu madhyamaschapi anirnitam jiva bhinnam janardanam. And then Prabhupada writes the translation and the little purport, which I would like to share. There are three classes of men: the lowest, that is Adham; those in the middle, Madhyam; and the best, Uttam. The lowest, Adham, think that there is no difference between God and the living entity, except that the living entity is under designations where the absolute truth has no designations. And people can be so stupid. In their opinion, as soon as the designation of the material body are dissolved, the jiva, the living entity, will mix with the supreme. They give the argument of ghata kasha and pata kasha, in which the body is compared to a pot with the sky within and the sky without. When the pot breaks, the sky inside becomes one with the sky outside. And so the impersonalists say that the living being becomes one with the supreme. This is their argument, but Srila Madhyavacharya says that such an argument is put forward by the lowest class of men. Another class of men cannot ascertain what the actual form of the Supreme is, but they agree that there is a Supreme who controls the activities of the ordinary living being. Such philosophers are accepted and mediocre. The best, however, this is Gyani. The best, however, are those who understand the Supreme Lord, Satchidan Vigraha, Purna Nadi Gunakam, Sarva Jiva Vilakshanam. His form is completely spiritual, full of bliss, and completely distinct from that of the conditioned soul or any other living entity. Uttamas tu harim prahus tartamena tesucha. Such philosophers are the best because they know that the Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself differently to worshippers in various modes of material nature. That's interesting. Yeah, Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself differently to worship in various modes of material nature. They know that there are 33 million demigods just to convince the conditioned soul that there is supreme power and to induce him to agree to worship one of these demigods so that by the association of devotees, he may be able to understand that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Imagine the situation of those souls who are trying to find their way through those 33 million demigods. And Prabhupada writes further, as Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Matta Parantram Nanyat Kinchit Asti Dhananjaya, there is no truth superior to me. Aham Adi Hi Devanam, I am the origin of all the demigods. Aham Sarvasva Prabhu, I am the superior to everyone, even Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the other demigods. These are the conclusion of the Shastra, and one who accepts these conclusions should be considered a first-class philosopher. Such a philosopher knows that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord of the demigods. Deva Deveshwaram Sutram Anandam Prana Vedinah. So this is very nicely where Prabhupada writes this verse, this purport, and explain about situation and position of impersonalist. And I feel that uh, uh, even as a spirit soul, means I tell devotees that this knowledge in Bhagavatam is absolute. Every verse is absolute. It is applicable in all the situation. And same with our relationship with other devotees, depending upon our personal connection, how much we personally connect to them or him or her, that's how we relate to them. And if not, we remain in, oh, I want to know that much, I don't want to know this much. And that's again that same concept here. We understand as much as we are personally connected to someone. Otherwise, we are in our own cuckoo's land. No, that's how we struggle. I struggle. And so Prabhupada purports not only gives the knowledge, they also give the idea how to apply this knowledge and actually purify our existence. So that's my direction, Prabhu. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you, great understanding. For this putting the Mataji and this Krishna Prabhu for training and actually give us opportunity to study and share this realization on Bhagavad Gita verse. So today we are studying Bhagavad Gita chapter 12 verse 5. क्लेशोऽधिकतरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तः अविगतिर्दुःखम् देहवद्भिरवाप्यते. For those whose minds are attached to unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advance to make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. So, Srila Prabhupada has given us explaining this point. So first of all, thank you, Sopan Prabhuji and Avinash Prabhuji for your very nice realization and try to actually give very meditative verse that as we actually studied the previous two verses, so Krishna responding to Arjuna's question, so we already talked about actually who's the most perfect yogi, so we discussed personalist, we discussed impersonalist, and now Krishna is now the last actually verse he concluded that by following personalism and impersonalism, we can get to the same goal. So now he further clarifying here is that for those, who are actually on this impersonal path, actually one who try to actually focus on this unmanifested, inconceivable aspect of the Supreme Law. So this impersonal, Mayavadis. So he's saying that actually their path of realization is very troublesome. So actually, means we have heard, means I have heard quite a lot about Mayavadis until now. Initially, it was very unclear to me, what Mayavad is. So we have been actually learning, as the points are actually coming into our discussion. But I think the recent discussion on all paths, the 3 verses, actually clarified actually a lot of doubts that I had in my mind, and it's very crystal clear what is the difference between impersonalism and personalism. So in this, actually, the very important point that Srila Prabhupada explained, and actually Krishna is saying that it's difficult for those who are embodied. So one who has actually this material body, it's very difficult for them to follow the path of impersonalism. And initially, before even I know this philosophy, I remember the discussion, when we used to actually do the temple services. And I remember that actually there was a discussion going, just chit chatting. And, actually it's very hard to accept Krishna as a person. So at that time I said, actually my realization at that time was that it's very hard for me to actually grasp, some Supreme Lord as impersonal. Because how we can conceive the idea of actually, impersonal, that is something impersonal, is quite a lot of speculation. Because maybe I was thinking, because I am actually embodied, I have the body. And since the childhood, I've always been taught, so Murti Puja is there, even in the Jainism. Even I later realized that it is actually it's an impersonalist path, in the end. But actually, because I have seen the Murti Puja, idol, idol worship and all that, and also not just Jainism, other, religions as well in Hinduism, within Hinduism. So I always had a concept of God as a person. But now in this verse, actually, it's very crystal clear why actually for someone, who has a body, to accept something impersonal is very, very difficult. Because for many, many lifetimes, actually we have been actually possessing various bodies, in various forms. Even now, actually, even before coming to this, and even after coming to this, actually, we know the philosophy that we say we are actually spirit soul, not this body. But to actually practically actually having this realization and actually acting according to that is very, very difficult. Because our attachment to the body is still there. And that's why actually is one of the main hurdle progressing on this path of actually bhakti yoga. Because attachment to the body, we still I still see myself as a body. Even I know the philosophy, but because of my attachment, is unable to give up all the attachments to the material things. They're all in relationship with the body. I actually recalled Srila Prabhupada's the point where he stated that actually if you think you are not this body, if you really think that you are spirit soul, then he said that when the body is not there, if you do not believe body, then where is the question of senses? And if there is no question of senses, then where is actually attachment to it, or actually sense gratification? You are already liberated. And that's actually point really actually got me thinking, which is so true, because, if you're thinking we're not this body, then why we're attached to the senses? So that means we are still attached to this body. And that's why it's very hard. I realize that actually accept something impersonal is very difficult, especially now because we have been studying this philosophy. And if somebody asks me to follow the path of personalism, it is very, very difficult for me to, because actually the idea of actually having, the supreme, it has a form, it has a deity. To reject that is very hard. So in the purpose, Srila Prabhupada says that, somebody who's actually impersonal, who's following impersonalism for so long, even with the grace of the Lord, he comes in contact with the pure devotee, if he has opportunity to progress further, to the actually realizing God in a personal or Bhagwan form. For him, it's still very troublesome because he's been following this for such a long, and give up that idea is very, very difficult. But actually, for one who's actually new on this path, who has actually possessed many bodies, who's embodied, for him actually Krishna, actually, so there are the deities, so even the deities are made of a material element. So Krishna actually descend himself into the deity, on the request of the acharyas, So by worshipping the deities, actually we get the direct opportunity to serve the supreme, because that is authorized form of the Lord, So Srila Prabhupada gave this actually example or analogy of the mailbox is very relevant, So once we actually designate a mailbox for a particular house, so whatever you post there is actually delivered. But if we conceive something different, in some empty box put somewhere else, which is not authorized by anyone, if you post anything in there, will not be actually delivered to the right destination. So this is very actually very nice example to understand how actually the deity form, and why they're authorized, and how actually by praying or worshipping the deity form, you are in a direct service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is very crystal clear. And actually, even we are worshipping a deity form, means thinking is that because we are actually, following this path of bhakti yoga, and the ultimate goal is to realize that we are not this body. So this concept of being embodied has to given up in the end, and actually realize their actually original constitutional position or original swarup. But for the impersonalism, Srila Prabhupada says that actually the ultimate realization, getting there is very, very troublesome. And why it is troublesome is also very nicely described. So even actually, as we discuss, because if somebody is following impersonalism for a long time, to give up that idea is very difficult. Even if they manage to actually follow through, says only two aspects are realized. So Satchidanand, Satchit and Anand. So in the impersonalism, you realize that you are eternal, and you will also actually gain the knowledge, to get to that point. But the most important part is the bliss form is still missing there. And we discussed this point, and in Amrish we explained this many times, that because we are actually individual souls, and we want to have association, we want to reciprocate. And when we don't get that, then we'll always be hankering for that bliss, And even if we actually get to the stage of Brahman, then because we're unsatisfied or dissatisfied, we again fall down to the material world, So this path is very troublesome. Even you get to the actually ultimate, actually Brahman stage. So and progress further is difficult, and actually getting to the final stage of realizing the supreme, is very, very difficult. There is no guarantee. Srila Prabhupada very nicely actually explained, and it is especially actually very difficult in the Kali Yuga. As Srila Prabhupada states, that is in Kali Yuga, no one has to actually artificially control the senses. So artificially controlling senses is very difficult. Srila Prabhupada says that even only few people may be able to do it, but there's always a chance of fall down. So many example of the yogis, given in Bhagavatam, as we know. So for the bhakti yoga, actually means we are attached to the senses, but we are not artificially controlling it, as we studied. So we're engaging in the service of the Lord, and that's how they get purified. So this process is very simple. Srila Prabhupada used this word simple many times. Process is very simple. Even actually in the chapter 9, it is said that this process, bhakti yoga is sukham, also very joyful as well. But practically, actually, I don't find it very joyful, because yes, we are actually joyful, when you actually associating with the devotees, actually doing the services. But to do the actually all these prescribed things on daily basis is actually I have to push myself. It doesn't come actually naturally. Even we are actually our spirit soul. It's very natural for him to render the service. But because we're embodied, because we're attached to this body, so in Nectar of Instruction, there is an example given. Because we are actually diseased, and as long as we're in disease condition, we have to take this medicine to cure that jaundice. So until that actually disease is perfectly cured, we're not going to find this process sukham, very joyful. So somehow we have to continue. So we will progressively, get rid of disease, and actually we get to the stage where we can able to render the actually pure devotional service, which is very joyful, and actually the joy is always increasing. So yes, as Srila Prabhupada said, the process is very simple and it's also joyful. And if you follow all the instructions, there is always a guarantee that actually, you will realize Krishna and you will actually go back to Godhead if that's what you're aiming for. So the comparison is very nicely actually explained in this purport, and is very clear as well. Even actually another important point that actually I heard from Srila Prabhupada in one of his lectures, that just in reference to the deity form, the Srila Prabhupada says that actually Krishna is so kind, especially for the devotees who are really want to serve him, render him loving devotional service, and in whatever form they want to worship him, he manifests in that form. So actually, so that again crystal clear, we want to worship, so we have the idea, there's deities and we want to worship, we want to have personal form of Krishna. So there are deities, for us that we can actually daily worship, even actually in the home, we are not actually worshiping deities, we are worshiping the photograph, we accept that as actually personal form of the Lord. So yeah, the philosophy is perfect here, and Srila Prabhupada has very nicely explained. So yes, Prabhuji, on this verse. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So thank you very much for all your wonderful realizations. So we'll conclude today at this point now. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila Gurudev ki jai. Word to word synonyms, translations and purpose by Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Nitai Gaur Chandra Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.